Hey, hey! Today I want to talk about an English film called Possessor. It was released in last year, 2020, and directed by Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg. Now, we all may know David Cronenberg as the master of body horror, and he has done also some other things in that genre. So, that is why I think this film is heavily being crammed into the body horror genre, but I wouldn't necessarily call this film a body horror film. First, let's try to get a hold of the plot. It's, according to Wikipedia, it's a sci-fi psychological thriller body horror film. So there's a lot of genres going on. But for me personally, when I saw this film, I didn't see that many genres. First of all, this film is extremely violent and bloody. There's a lot of blood in this, but I wouldn't say gore. Though it is some kind of a gore-ish film, it is actually depending on how you would describe this film, or where is your threshold or bar for labeling something as a body horror or labeling something as gore. But I wouldn't necessarily do this. And on the other side, this film is a sci-fi film, definitely a sci-fi film, though the sci-fi element is not nearly as pronounced at all. It is a sort of a subtle thing. Now, I've read some reviews and people talking about it, and that's why actually I saw this film. First of all, this film's marketing and the poster that it is being conveyed is, for me, I think very misleading. That is not how this film works. Maybe that's what they wanted to do, or I don't know. But this film is not that. For me, I would say there's no horror element at all. Maybe there's some psychological horror elements, but not horror. Then it is a true psychological thriller. And on the other hand, this film delves deeper into a bunch of things, and with that comes the issues of identity and the duality of men, and how we perceive the sense of self, these kind of things. First of all, I think this is Brandon Cronenberg's third film, but I think this is his full-fledged film that he actually done with the studio, or at least independently. That's a full-fleshed out feature-length film. So, in that sense, I think this film is beautiful to watch. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous, and the story is straightforward. The story is not that convoluted, though there are some complex situations, but it's not complicated at all. They actually try to convey it very easily. And one of the things that I liked about Cronenberg's storytelling is that as the script is written by him, he tried to keep things minimal. There's a very minimal feeling sort of to it, and he doesn't over explain anything or doesn't even overstay his welcome. Even though I saw the uncut version, so I'm not sure how much the cut version is. It's actually 104 minutes long, so it's not that a long film. And I think the burns and the actions that happen quite progressively, and it's a very fun thing to watch. And at times, this film might not feel that special because there are things you've seen in other films or things that have been done better. But there's just something about this film that feels very personal and kind of a quote-unquote real, or what real could be in the future. So in that sense, there's a looming sense of dread, I guess, in the back of my mind when you see this film, and that's why I think the psychological thing totally works. Now, as far as body horror things go, this is not a body horror film. This is a violent film, this is a bloody film, but I wouldn't necessarily count it as gore. And on the other hand, this is a psychological film, and the horror elements are also not there. It's not a horror film at all. I don't know why people are labeling it as a horror film, but for me, I don't count it as a horror film or a psychological horror film. It's a psychological thriller film. So yeah, all in all, the reviews and the praise that I heard, I was expecting a little bit more. So I was satisfied with watching this film, but I plan to look forward what Brandon Cronenberg does in his future, because I think he has a bright future, and if he goes to this space and where he writes his script, then he can be the new elite horror director that has been emerging from quite a few years, dating back to Alex Garland, to Jordan Peele and Ari Aster and Robert Eggers. So I look forward to his other films, and I think for a first time Brandon Cronenberg viewer, I think this is a very good introduction. And yeah, if you like those kind of things that I talked about, you will enjoy this film. But I wouldn't put too much weight to it, or I wouldn't expect a masterpiece out of it. So that is why I give this film 2.5 out of 5.